welcome back again to our discussions on the glories of Sri Vrindavan Dhama. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paschachade Shatane. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So, today we'll continue with our descriptions of Krishna in Vrindavan. I was reading in Srimad Bhagavatam the other day that such discussions have a twofold effect. Number one, they free us from material existence. And number two, they help us to become absorbed in remembering Krishna. Shravadam Kirtanam Vishnu Shmaranam. The verse I was reading was in the 10th canto, 46th chapter, verse 21. I'll recite it for you. As we remember the wonderful deeds Krishna performed, his playful sidelong glances, his smiles, and his words, O Uddhava, we forget all our material engagements. When we see the places where Mukunda enjoyed his sporting pastimes, the rivers, hills, and forests he decorated with his lotus feet, our minds become totally absorbed in him. I think that says it all as to why we have been doing, and we will continue to do, our lectures on our beloved Vrindavan Dhama. So, today I would like to speak about a point made in our last lecture. It was entitled The Darling of Gokula, when we heard that when Krishna was in the age of Poganda, 7 to 11 years old, he carried a black gold-capped staff in his hand, you may remember. What for? To control cows and calves, to play fight with his friends, and number 3, to declare himself an eventual heir to Braja's throne. Now I was very intrigued by that fact that Krishna carried the staff in order to eventually declare himself heir to Braja's throne. In other words, to become king of Vrindavan. Why was I intrigued? Because we rarely, if ever, hear of Krishna being king of Vrindavan, whereas we very often hear of Srimati Radharani being queen of Vrindavan, Vrindavaneshwari, Srimati Radharani ki jai. Or you could say being queen of everything, for that matter. And everyone's favorite, Sri Radha Kripa Kataksha Stavaraja, written by Lord Shiva. In text 12, he writes, Makeshwari, Kuryeshwari, Swadeshwari, Shureshwari, Triveda Bharat Ishwari, Pramana Shasha Neshwari, Rameshwari, Kameshwari, Pramona Kanan Eshwari, Brajeshwari, Brajadipe, Shri Radhika Namostute. O Queen of Vedic sacrifices, O Queen of pious activities, O Queen of the material world, O Queen of the demigods, O Queen of Vedic scholarship, O Queen of knowledge, O Queen of the goddesses of fortune, O Queen of patience, O Queen of Vrindavan, the forest of happiness, O Queen of Braj, O Empress of Braj, O Shri Radhika, obeisances to you. She's queen of everything. Most importantly, she's queen of Vrindavan. So just when and how did Krishna become king of Vrindavan, as he aspired with that staff? And for that matter, when did Shri Radhika become queen of Vrindavan? When was her coronation? And what's more, if Krishna did become king of Vrindavan, why then is Srimati Radharani more famous as the Queen of Braj? Perfect questions, and I'll try my best to provide the perfect answers. By Srila Prabhupada's grace. Well, to begin with, we touched on the pastime of Krishna's coronation about 1 year ago, I think exactly. But I have discovered many new details that will help to answer the questions we've posed. The crowning of Krishna as King of Vrindavan was in essence a playful pastime, or you could say a play pastime, of Krishna and his cowherd boyfriends. When they were in the beautiful forests of Catravan. Catravan literally means the forest of marvel and wonderment. What a name for a forest. People go to Yosemite National Park in America, but what about going to a forest of marvel and wonderment? That's Krishna consciousness. That's Vrindavan. So the pastime begins with the cowherd boys tending their cows in Catravan. And the boys, as they often do, were discussing how they might glorify Krishna in a unique way. When suddenly Sridham suggested, let's coronate Krishna as King of Braj. All the boys were like really blissful at the thought. And at once they busied themselves with various arrangements for the coronation of Krishna. And after much preparation, the cowherd boys, they sat Krishna on it's described a regal stone beneath a canopy of flowers. And then they crowned him with a wreath of leaves and fresh buds. This is their playful pastime. So Krishna, it's described, he happily assumed the role of king, and he appointed Madhu Mangala as the leader of a group of boys to go around and widely broadcast Krishna's new appointment as King of Braj, far and wide. So then Madhu Mangala and his friends, they wandered from forest to forest to forest in Vrindavan, calling out, O residents of Vrindavan, just hear this decree. The only authority now in Vrindavan is the son of Nanda Maharaj, Krishna, the crowned king of this land. Anyone found unlawfully picking flowers or fruit shall be brought before him and severely punished. If you disobey the king's authority in even the slightest way, you shall be dealt with strictly and mercilessly. Cowherd boys. And then Madhu Mangala proceeded to address not only the personalities, other gopas and gopis and whomever. He started to address herds of deer with the same proclamation, flocks of birds. How's it described? A muster of peacocks, a pride of lions, and even a school of fish. He said the same thing. Of course, it's Braj. And everyone who heard his words, they were agreeable, except for one special group. You can imagine. There was a group of gopis collecting wildflowers nearby. And they heard the news. So what did they do? They ran excitedly to Lalita Devi, where she and her attendants were lovingly decorating Sri Radha in a beautiful forest grove. Now, as soon as Lalita heard this news, her face flushed and her hands shook. She was upset. And as hard as she tried, she couldn't fix a certain flower crown upon Sri Radha's beautiful hair. She was just shaking too much. And turning to her friends, she said, quote, in reality, we should see Radharani as Queen of Vrindavan. What does it matter that some cowherd playing make-believe king, foolishly thinks that we can be subjugated as easily as dumb forest animals? Then Lalita held the crown playfully above Sri Radha's head and announced with a smile, let this crown made of forest treasures proclaim Braj's real monarch. And she placed the crown on Radha's head, playfully. And as the gopis cheered, Lalita ordered Vrindadevi. "Oh friend," she said, "at once assemble a full battalion of gopis to capture those rascals making their nonsense proclamation about their so-called king." So Sri Radha smiled and she added, "Those who falsely claim authority over my kingdom should be challenged, defeated, bound hand and foot, and brought before me for punishment." So Vrindadevi immediately armed thousands of gopis with flower batons and sent them on to Catravan. And on the way, they soon encountered, Subal, Madhamangal, and other gopas, in their the business of proclaiming Krishna as King of Vrindavan. And suddenly, it's described, the boys found themselves surrounded by thousands of angry gopis. And all the boys fled in fear, except Madhamangal. He's kind of plump from all the sweets. So he's less agile than the others. And he was captured by the gopis and bound with what? A flower garland. This is Vrindavan. And then he was brought before Sri Radha, who said, quote, "I am the real authority over this land, but you promote an impostor as ruler of my kingdom. For that offense, you must be punished. And soon your friends and your rascal leader will also be punished." Then Madhamangal, he hung his head very low, and he whispered defiantly, "Make my punishment such that my belly is always full." And hearing this, Radharani frowned. What? She clapped her hands twice, and she ordered her gopi guards. She has gopi guards. She said to them, "Release him. This fake brahmana is only interested in filling his belly. Send him away with the message for this would-be king he's mentioning. Give up your false title. Tell your would-be king, give up your false title, lands and symbols at once, or pay the price." She sent that message. Take this message, Madhamangal, to your would-be king. Krishna, give up your false title, lands and symbols at once, or pay the price. Then I read, with his hands still bound behind his back, with tied up in a flower garland, Madhamangal ran back to Catravan. And when he arrived, Krishna rose from his throne and he embraced Madhamangal and he inquired, "How's everything going with the proclamation?" So then Madhamangal told Krishna about everything that had taken place with Sri Radha and her gopis. So Krishna said, "How could this have happened?" And Madhamangal replied, "Well, this is the result of our pronouncing you king of Braj, but I think in truth, the real monarch of this land, as far as I've seen, is Srimati Radharani. And we have challenged Radha's authority. And unless you surrender to her, Krishna, I fear that you too will meet with such an ignoble fate as I have experienced. My friend, I implore you, please abandon your impudence." So Krishna took this seriously. He considered the situation, maybe going to war with the gopis or what. And then he smiled. And Shastra says he thought surrendering to Sri Radha might be more thrilling than defying her. I thought that was really nice. Surrendering to Sri Radha might be more thrilling than defying her. So that's what happened. Very soon, Krishna and Madhamangal, they set out on the path to Radha's camp, where Sri Radha's parrot spies had already informed her of Krishna's intention to surrender. There's no secrets in Vrindavan because these parrots are everywhere. And even today you see so many green parrots in Vrindavan. They're so beautiful with the little red beaks there. And so they'd already spread the information that was Krishna was coming to surrender. But Shastra says that upon seeing Krishna approaching, Srimati Radharani's face turned pale. Her limbs trembled, and tears began to well in her eyes. So Lalita noticed this, and she placed a reassuring hand on Radharani's forearm. And she said, "Dear one, be steady. To accept surrender from a defeated rival, you must display the regal composure befitting a victorious monarch." Radharani tried to calm down. She took a deep breath and she addressed her mind. Radharani addressed her mind. "Oh friend, please be calm. Your desires will be fulfilled soon enough." And then it's written that Krishna was blinded by the golden radiance of Srimati Radharani as he came forward. But it's really interesting. But as he chanted Radha's name, the glare faded to reveal a most beautiful Sri Radhika seated upon a jeweled throne. Surrounding Sri Radha were thousands of gopis, armed with flower weapons. Sri Vrindavan Dhama ki. So Krishna thought, seeing this, Krishna said, or he thought, "I did well not to test my Gopa army against such a superior military force." Superior military force. Then, as he got close to Sri Radhika, Krishna turned pale. His limbs stiffened, and he froze in his tracks as streams of tears shot from his eyes. What a beautiful description we're hearing of Sri Vrindavan Dhama by our previous acharyas. So then Madhu Mangal, he whispered into Krishna's ear, "Oh my love-struck friend, don't let a few morsels of happiness deprive you of the feast of bliss awaiting you at Sri Radhika's side. Control your heart and keep walking." Control your heart and keep walking. So as Krishna came close enough for the gopis to hear his footsteps, Radha thought, "I am most fortunate. Not only can I see Krishna's enchanting form, but I can also hear the tinkling of his ankle bells. I am most fortunate. Not only can I see Krishna's enchanting form, but I can hear the tingling of his ankle bells." And as Radha and Krishna met, they came in front of each other. Lalita Saki and Madhu Mangal, it's described, they exchanged notable glances. Like, usually there's so much conflict between the two, but really everyone wants to facilitate Radha and Krishna's meeting, because separation's too hard to bear. So as Radha and Krishna met, Lalita Saki and Madhu Mangal exchanged notable glances. Yes, I thought that was wonderful. Then holding Krishna's hand, Madhu Mangal cleared his throat and playfully addressed Sri Radha. "O powerful Queen of Vrindavan, Vrindavan Eshwari, I have advised my friend Krishna, the prince, the prince of Nandagram, to submit to your royal authority. Following my wise counsel, he has come here to surrender himself to you unconditionally, unconditional surrender." So Madhu Mangal looked at Krishna and then Radha before continuing. And then he said, as a token of his subservience, Krishna will offer you his most valuable possession, his priceless embrace. Please graciously accept it. When he said that, all the gopis started giggling. Then stepping forward, Madhamangal took the wreath of flowers from Krishna's head and placed that wreath of flowers at Sri Radha's feet. Then Krishna laid his flute on Srimati Radharani's footstool, where she places her feet. And then he knelt before her with folded hands. Then the cowherd boys who had joined, they'd all come and joined, they loudly proclaimed Radha to be Braja's queen, Vrindavaneshwari Srimati Radharani ki. And they said, and Krishna's queen as well. They said that she's Vrindavan's queen, but they said, and she's Krishna, they said, and Krishna's queen as well. Then Radharani motioned for Krishna to sit beside her. Now, she's queen, so he's a subject now. So she motioned to sit beside her. And Shastra states that Krishna happily accepted to be subservient and obedient to Sri Radha. And Sri Radha agreed to give Krishna shelter from King Cupid, who constantly assaulted Krishna with his sharp arrows. Wow. Radharani agreed to give Krishna shelter from what? From King Cupid, who constantly assaulted Krishna with his sharp arrows. And then meanwhile, Madhamangal was dancing around in great happiness. And actually Lalita Saki, she was pleased with Madhamangal. And to show her gratitude, she placed one plump laddu in his mouth. And then Madhamangal munched on it, and then he mumbled, "You committed a grave offense by shackling a brahmana. If you feed me 100,000 laddus, then perhaps you will be freed from your sins, Lalita Saki." So Lalita smiled and ordered that a large tray of sweets be given to Madhamangal. And he went off somewhere and ate them all, excused himself. "I have some important business," he said. So everyone laughed, and it was getting late, so everyone turned to go home. And as they left, they reminisced about this playful game they had that day, declaring Srimati Radharani Queen of Vrindavan. Hare Krishna. Such pastimes are very profound. You could say this is absolute truth. Sometimes people use that term. What is the absolute truth? Very seriously. This is the absolute truth. Vrindavan and the pastimes of Radha and Krishna with the Brajabasis. Very profound. And as such, hearing specifically today how Sri Radha controls Krishna with her divine love, and how she is Vrindavan's queen. Many Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis aspire to be her servants. Actually, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami goes so far as to say in his Svaniyama Dashakam, verses 3 and 4, it's so beautiful, very deep. He says, "I will never leave the feet of Radhika to go to Krishna. Even if Krishna goes to Dwarka and calls me there, I will not go. However, if out of some madness Radhika has somehow gone to Dwarka, I will fly even faster than Garuda to serve her there." Oh my gosh. "I will never leave the feet of Sri Radhika to go to Krishna. Even if Krishna goes to Dwarka and calls me there, I will not go. However, if out of some madness Radhika has somehow gone to Dwarka, I will fly even faster than Garuda to serve her there. Svanyamadashakam, verses 3 and 4. Whew. Now, it's not over. It's never over in Vrindavan. It's just increasing ad infinitum. At this point, the plot thickens, as it said. The next morning, Chandravali, we gave a long class about Chandravali, 8 months ago. You may remember she's Sri Radha's chief competitor in love for Krishna. Wonderful gopi. But she's Sri Radha's chief competitor in love for Krishna. She heard about, Srimati Radharani's playful coronation and how she became, Queen of Vrindavan. Now, everyone in Braj had understood that it was all in fun, but nevertheless, Chandravali was incensed. She was so angry. And it's described, through hot tears, she spoke to her best friend Padma, who pacified her friend with a bold plan, which was that Padma would convince Krishna to crown Chandravali Queen of Vrindavan instead. Because, obviously Queen of Vrindavan means she's going to have so much access to loving pastimes with her beloved Krishna. So Padma's plan was that she would convince Krishna to crown Chandravali Queen of Vrindavan instead, and not in play, but in real, for real. And not in some distant grove, but officially before all the Brajabasis. So a few days later, in the midst of a large crowd of gopas and gopis in a market somewhere, Krishna was there. Padma approached Krishna, and she declared very loudly so everyone could hear, quote, "So now, may the beautiful and qualified gopi, whose name begins with Chandra, be the Queen of Vrindavan and its many residents. May that gopi and none other also be the queen of Sri Krishna's heart." Now, when all the Brajavasis present heard this proclamation, they were shocked. Everyone turned and looked at Krishna, expecting him to say, "No, no, may the beautiful and qualified gopi whose name is Radharani be the Queen of Vrindavan and its many residents. May that gopi and none other also be the queen of my heart." But by the influence of the pastime potency of Yogamaya, Purnamasi, the word Chandra reminded Krishna of Sri Radha's partial expansion. You could say Radharani, a gopi whose name was Chandrakanti. This Brajagopi is described in Shastra as the personification of Radharani's effulgence. So non-different than Sri Radha. We'll speak more about her in a few minutes. Now Krishna, assuming that Padma was speaking about this Chandrakanti, not Chandravali, but Chandrakanti, he let out a sigh saying, "Yes, let it be so." But hearing these words, Sri Radha and her gopi friends, they took it that Krishna had actually revealed his real heart, that Chandravali should be crowned as Queen of Vrindavan. Now it's mentioned in the Brihad Gautamriya Tantra, Matsya Purana, and Padma Purana, and also I read in Sri Jiva Goswami's Madhava Mahotsava, that at that point the atmosphere became so intense, so caustic, it is a good word, caustic. It took the form of rust-colored mist hanging in the air. The atmosphere became so intense. It took the form of rust-colored mist hanging in the air. Thus everyone left and hurried home to share this unfortunate news that Krishna had revealed his real heart. He wanted Chandravali to be Queen of Vrindavan. So the next day, realizing that he'd been, very much misunderstood. Krishna thought long and hard about how he could get out of this predicament, but he couldn't figure it out. It's the Leela. So eventually, he decided to meet with Vrindadevi. And when he found her, he explained everything that had happened, and he pleaded, Devi, my life is in your hands. If you do not save me, I shall perish. So Vrindadevi said, Krishna, your careless conclusion of Padma's words has deeply wounded Radha. This time, you'll have to do something really extraordinary to get her back. So then Vrinda paused for a moment, and then she said, this news of Chandravali's coronation is being spread by rumor. It does not sound like the sort of official decree that inaugurates a new monarchy. In my opinion, the best thing is if we publicly declare that Sri Radha will be finally and officially coronated in a large public ceremony as Queen of Vrindavan. In this way, we'll stop the ill rumors. So a little note here. Some references say that there were only 2 coronations. The one the cowherd boys arranged, spontaneously for Krishna, which we described, and then the other one we described, the playful one where the gopis arranged for Sri Radha to be crowned as Queen of Vrindavan. However, Bhakti Ratnakara describes that some days after these 2 playful coronations, there was a final grand, official, public coronation for Radha. And we'll describe that in a minute. So Krishna seemed a little perplexed by Vrindadevi's proposal for a public declaration saying, that actually Radharani is going to be crowned Queen of Vrindavan. How's this going to work? So he said to Vrindadevi, how are we going to do this? So Vrindadevi, she consulted her senior, Purnamasi, and they came up with a great idea. So the next day, Vrindadevi climbed on top of a large hill in Vrindavan, and she commanded Lord Brahma to speak from the sky. She told him what to say. So a few minutes later, Brahma spoke. It's described in a celestial voice from above to all the residents of Vrindavan. He began, Purnamasi, O great yogini, without delay make due arrangements that Srimati Radharani will be crowned Queen of Vrindavan. By seating Sri Radha upon a jeweled throne and performing her royal abhishek, you will spread her glory not only throughout Gokula, but also throughout the entire earth, and thus the entire universe shall rejoice. This royal bath, this abhishek, will proclaim the love for Radha cherished by the Brajabasis, and especially by Krishna. Therefore, it should be performed on the full moon day of this month, the month of Madhu. And then this voice from the heavens, Brahma, addressed Sri Radha. O Radha, do not be shy to accept such public worship, because this ceremony bestows peace, prosperity, and happiness to all. You should embrace it as a service to the world. And then again, the heavenly voice, Brahma, spoke to Purnamasi and ordered her to start the auspicious ceremony at once by observing the introductory rites called Adivasha. And then the celestial voice fell silent. So all the Brajabasis were amazed to hear these orders, descending from the heavens. But it's described that Chandravali and her friends, they suffered utter disappointment, while everyone else felt indescribable bliss. So at this point, I mean, everyone's enlivened. Oh, Sri Radha is going to be crowned Queen of Vrindavan. So what was the reaction? It's described very nicely by Sri Rupa Goswami. Purnamasi and Vrindadevi fainted in ecstasy. Radha went numb, unable to speak. Her girlfriends embraced one another. Nanda Baba entered a state of disbelief. And King Vrishabhanu proudly distributed gifts. Kirtida Sundari planned how she would bathe her daughter, and Mukura, the old gopi, sang wildly. Mother Yasoda immediately called for the festival to begin. The gopas, the cowherd boys, were all dancing, and Krishna wandered about Varshana, clutching Subal's hand. Krishna wandered about Varshana, clutching Subal's hand. What a description. And after the shock of initial ecstasy had worn off, the Brajabasis busied themselves with arrangements for this scheduled ceremony. I was reading craftsmen constructed platforms, thrones, and canopies. Women, they placed water pots with auspicious leaves in auspicious places. Young gopis fashioned decorative ornaments. And interestingly, it said that children distributed incense everywhere. There were some serious obstacles created by Padma over a few days. But eventually, the ceremony of crowning Sri Radha went off with great, how do they say, pomp and circumstance. And Raghunath Das Goswami describes it in the most wonderful way. In his Braj Vilashtava, text number 61, he writes, quote, ordered by Brahma, who spoke from the sky, Purnamasi Devi crowned Srimati Radharani Queen of the beautiful forest of Vrindavan by jubilantly sprinkling the waters of the Manasa Ganga and other sacred rivers upon her head in the company of Savitri Devi and other delighted demigoddesses. I pray that sacred place known as Unmata Radhasthali, the place where Srimati Radharani became overwhelmed with happiness, may sprinkle some transcendental happiness on me. Raghunath Das Goswami. Hare Krishna. That was pure bliss. Anyway, before concluding today, as I mentioned earlier, I wanted to speak briefly about the gopi Krishna thought of when Padma said the name Chandra in her declaration to Krishna. As we mentioned, she had meant Chandravali, of course, but Krishna took it to mean Chandrakanti, who we mentioned was, or is, the personified effulgence of Srimati Radharani. Now, when I read that, I was again intrigued. I never heard of this gopi, and she's the personification of Radharani's effulgence, and she's in this particular pastime, and I wanted to find out more, so I did a lot of research, consulted some learned godbrothers, etc. And to begin with, I found that according to the Padma Purana, Chandrakanti was an Apsara. Now we know that the Apsaras, or sometimes we refer to them as Gandharvas, are all very talented dancers and musicians from the higher planets. But with more research, I found out, Rupa Goswami went deeper, much deeper. He goes much deeper into this, especially in his Sri Shtavamala, Sri Vrindavan Eshwari Namastotara Sata Namastotra, verses 11 and 12. Again, seek and ye shall find. There, Chandrakanti is described as an expansion of Srimati Radharani, who appeared as a Gandharva, or he says Gandharvika, to teach others how to love Lord Krishna. Here's the verse from Rupa Goswami. He writes, Sarakishorika Goshta Yuvaraja Vilasini Govinda Prema Shikshartha Nati Krita Nijam Shaka. Quote, Srimati Radharani is eternally young. She enjoys transcendental pastimes with Braja's prince, and she expanded to become the Gandharvika Chandrakanti, to teach others how to love Lord Govinda by dancing for him. Now he further states that Chandrakanti appeared especially to teach Gandharva girls, because that's where she, the Padma Purana said that she's a Gandharva. So she appeared specifically to teach Gandharvika girls how to love Krishna. And then I found a quote from Jiva Goswami, who states that these girls, these Gandharva girls, they appeared during Srimati Radharani's coronation, during the Abhishek bathing. And Purnamasi noticed them, and then she asked the girls to sing about Radha and Krishna. And because of their previous association with Chandrakanti, the songs these Gandharva girls sang, it's described, revealed their knowledge of Radha and Krishna, according to Jiva Goswami, describing the mutual love of the divine couple and the service the gopis rendered to them. So it's obvious that through Chandrakanti's teachings, these girls had become well-versed and spiritually realized. Now in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami further describes Chandrakanti's, you could say, teachings by example. He says she was, in Vrindavan, she was a celebrated, fair-faced girl who observed strict celibacy, rejecting marriage, being determined to obtain Krishna as her husband, typical gopi. She also faithfully maintained a daily spiritual regime, constantly meditating on the transcendental form of the Lord and chanting his glories. Now again, Jiva Goswami enters the picture. He elaborates on these statements by noting that the transcendental form of the Lord upon which Chandrakanti meditated on was the deity of Krishna. Interesting. And then, moreover, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu cites that Chandrakanti is an example of a sadhaka, again teaching us, who cultivated a spontaneous attachment for Krishna, first awakening ecstatic devotion, bhava, and then loving devotion, prema, for the Lord. So this cultivation of Krishna consciousness, you could say, was her pastime because, well, she's not different than Radharani, but teaching us. So again, Rupa, Raghunath, and Jiva, further readings revealed that they all say that Chandrakanti, they all identify Chandrakanti as Sri Radha. But they explain that, however, unlike Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is directly and fully a combination of Radha and Krishna, Chandrakanti is only a partial expansion of Radharani. Now, Srila Prabhupada, in his translation of verses 154 and 155 from the Gora Gunadesha Dipika by Kavi Karnapurna, Prabhupada goes on to say that Chandrakanti also appeared, get this, as Gadadhar Das in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. Those verses that he was referring to begin with Radha Vibhuti Rupaya Chandrakanti, which means Chandrakanti was the embodiment of Sri Radha's potency. And Srila Prabhupada's translation of that is even more specific. Prabhupada writes, Chandrakanti, who is the effulgence of Srimati Radharani. Then Prabhupada says that although Gadadhar Das is famous as the luster of Sri Radha's body, he's different than Lord Chaitanya, who's characterized as having not only the bodily luster of Sri Radha, but her emotions as well. It's pretty technical, but it's pretty deep and wonderful. So we can conclude that the Gopi Chandrakanti is Radharani's personified effulgence, appearing in three forms: as a Gandharva, as a Gopi, and later on as Gadadhar Das. Hare Krishna. So I think that's enough nectar for today. Let us conclude with some verses glorifying Srimati Radharani. So these two verses come from Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati's illustrious book entitled Shri Radharasa Sudhinidhi. 2 verses. Perfect way to finish today. A transcendental splendor who bears the name Radha, who is the most sweet, who showers her followers with a monsoon of glorious nectar, and who is worshipped in Braj Mandala by hundreds and thousands of splendid maidens, more beautiful and glorious than millions of goddesses of fortune, shine in the heart of that most fortunate person who always keeps her within his heart. Shri Radha, who is tossed to and fro by the great waves in the nectar ocean of bliss and love, who with the great wonder of playful glances from the corners of her restless, reddish eyes enjoys a great festival of pastimes, who is filled with the most wonderful gloria of love, and who is the most charming goddess in all the worlds, enjoys pastimes in the palace that is Vrindavan forest. Vrindavan Ishwari Srimati Radharani Ki. So thank you very much, Prabhus. This has been, I really enjoyed sharing with you today these amazing glories of Krishna's becoming king of Vrindavan, but even more so, Srimati Radharani becoming Vrindavaneshwari, the Queen of Vrindavan. And I'll look forward to researching in the bookshelf behind me for a number of hours to find some more nectarian pastimes that we can all relish, which will purify our hearts and will eventually awaken divine love, which will qualify us to somehow or other, by Srila Prabhupada's mercy, enter into these eternal pastimes in Goloka Vrindavan. So thank you. See you in a couple of days. Shri Shri Gauranitai ki, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram ki, Shri Shri Radhasham Sundar ki, Vrindavaneshwari Srimati Radharani ki, Shri Prabhupada ki, Goloka Vrindavan Dhama ki, Gaura Premanandi, Jai Jai Sri Radhe, Sham Sham Sham, Hare Krishna, Sri Radhe.